I had to try it. I mean, what choice did I have? It all started as a joke. At least, that's how she framed it. But sometimes, truth hides behind a joke, like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's exactly what I should have seen in that moment. If only I had. It was just a regular Saturday evening, or at least it started that way. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the room with that warm golden light that only comes during the last hours of the day. I sat across from Sarah at our dinner table, a half-empty bottle of wine between us. We'd both had long days, and we were looking forward to a quiet evening. Sarah, my wife of 6 years, had a way of making those evenings feel like an oasis. She was the kind of woman who was easy to talk to. Smart, funny, always had a way to make everything feel lighter, even when life got heavy. We talked about the mundane stuff first. Work, the house, things we were going to do the following week. Nothing unusual. Then, we slipped into the comfortable silence that couples sometimes fall into, where words aren't necessary, and you just enjoy the presence of the other person. But then, out of nowhere, she said it. "You'd probably sleep with my sister if I let you, wouldn't you?" She said it so casually, like it was a regular part of our conversation. Like it was nothing, and I didn't know how to respond. It felt like the room had just been slammed with cold air. My heart skipped a beat, and I looked up at her, trying to figure out if she was joking or if she actually meant it. Her eyes were on her plate, her fork playing with the remnants of her dinner, her face still holding that soft smile like she had just told me a funny story. But I couldn't focus on the smile. I couldn't focus on anything except those words. For a second, I froze. The words kept echoing in my head, bouncing off the walls of my mind. "You'd probably sleep with my sister." I tried to laugh it off, but it wasn't funny. Not at all. "What? You're joking, right?" She looked up at me, eyes still playful. But there was something in her gaze, something that made me pause. "I mean, you've always said she's attractive," she added, her voice light, as if she were commenting on the weather. The weight of her words settled on me. This wasn't just a passing comment. She knew exactly what she was saying. Sarah and Emily, her sister, had always had this unique dynamic. And it was clear from the moment I met them both that Sarah was the more outspoken one, while Emily was quieter, more reserved. But they were close. Too close, sometimes. They had this connection, this bond, that always seemed a little too perfect. But Emily, she was stunning. There was no denying it. She had that beauty that grabbed attention, the kind that made heads turn in a room. I'd noticed it, of course. Who wouldn't? She wasn't just beautiful in a conventional way. It was the way she carried herself, the way she made every word feel like it mattered. I had to admit she was mesmerizing. And yes, I'd said it to Sarah before, probably too often. Emily's beautiful. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just the truth. But now, Sarah was dropping this bomb on me like it was no big deal. It felt like she was giving me an opening, like she was testing me. "I mean, come on," she continued, her voice so casual. "You've always said she was attractive. I've seen the way you look at her, the way you talk about her. I can't blame you. I'd probably want to sleep with her too if I were a guy." What was happening? Why was she saying this? What was I supposed to do with this information? Was it some kind of game? Was she trying to provoke me? I felt my heart racing in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I laughed again, trying to play it off. "You're joking, right? You know I love you. That's that's not something I'd even think about." But deep down, the words lingered, and they didn't go away. The thought was planted, like a seed that started growing in my mind. What if she was right? What if, deep down, I was attracted to Emily in a way that I shouldn't be? It wasn't the first time the thought had crossed my mind, the attraction, the pull. But it had always been fleeting. I loved Sarah. She was my wife, the mother of my children. I couldn't betray that, could I? But Sarah's words, they stayed with me. Later that evening, as we settled into bed, I could feel the weight of her comment hanging in the air. I tried to fall asleep, but my mind wouldn't let go. What did she mean by it? Was this some kind of twisted test? Was she challenging me? Or was there something deeper, something darker she was trying to get me to admit? I tossed and turned, the images of Emily's face flashing through my mind. I couldn't get rid of it. I knew I had to talk to Sarah. I had to ask her what she meant. But then, as I lay there, I realized something that made my stomach churn. What if this wasn't a joke? What if this was her way of telling me something? Maybe, just maybe, Sarah had already seen something in me, something I hadn't fully acknowledged yet, something I'd been trying to bury. I had to know. But how could I ask her? How could I bring it up without making everything worse? And then I thought about what she had said. You'd probably sleep with my sister if I let you, wouldn't you? I had to try it. I knew this wasn't just about Sarah's joke anymore. There was something deeper at play, something about the way she'd said it. It wasn't just playful teasing. It felt almost like an invitation. It felt like a challenge. I couldn't shake the thought of Emily, Sarah's younger sister, Emily. She'd always been the quieter one, the one who would slip into the background at family gatherings, while Sarah took the spotlight. But Emily had a presence. It was subtle, understated, but unmistakable. And I'd noticed it from the very first time I met her. The way she carried herself, the way her soft, honey-colored hair framed her face in that effortless, perfect way. Her laugh, light and airy, always seemed to make everything around her brighter. There was something magnetic about her, something I had noticed early on but always tried to brush aside. But now those feelings, those fleeting moments of attraction I'd buried deep down inside, felt impossible to ignore. Sarah's words were haunting me, replaying over and over in my mind. You'd probably sleep with my sister if I let you, wouldn't you? What if Sarah was giving me a way out? What if she was testing me to see how far I'd go, to see if I'd actually consider it? Maybe she didn't see it as betrayal. Maybe this was her way of giving me permission, a strange kind of permission. Or maybe she was planting the seed to see if I would act on it. But then I asked myself why. Why would she set this up? Why wouldn't she just trust me? We had been together for years. We had built something real. Or had we? Maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe there was something Sarah knew that I didn't. I decided to push all those thoughts aside for the time being. I needed to sleep. I needed to clear my head. But sleep didn't come. The next morning, I found myself thinking about Emily even more. And it wasn't just her looks, it was her presence. She had this way of drawing people in, of making them feel like they mattered. She made you feel seen, like she could read you in a way that no one else could. And maybe that's what I was drawn to, the fact that Emily didn't need to try. She just was. I remembered one evening not long ago when Emily had come over to our house. Sarah was out running errands, and it was just me and Emily. We'd started talking about the usual stuff, life, work, the things we liked. But then, she started talking about relationships. She seemed almost too interested. Do you ever get bored? She asked, her voice low, almost like a secret shared between just us. Bored? Of what? I had asked, confused. Of being in a committed relationship, she said, her eyes meeting mine with a strange intensity. I know Sarah's great, but sometimes. Don't you ever wonder what it would be like with someone else? It was a random question, and it had thrown me off. I had laughed it off, of course. No, not really. Well, why would I? But the look in her eyes made me second-guess my answer. It was like she was testing me. Or maybe she was just curious. Maybe she wanted to know if I'd admit to something, anything. But I had shrugged it off. I had to. And now, sitting at my kitchen table the next morning, those words from Emily echoed in my mind. What if she had been planting the seeds in my head too? What if Sarah wasn't the only one who had been testing me? What if Emily was also playing her own game? It didn't help that Emily had been a fixture in our lives for so long. She was always around holidays, family dinners, even just casual hangouts. I couldn't help but notice the way she carried herself, the way her body moved when she walked into a room. It was hard not to see it. But I had always respected the boundaries. The lines that shouldn't be crossed. But now, after Sarah's comment, those boundaries were starting to blur. And that's when I started thinking about it, about the possibility. I couldn't deny that I was tempted, but I also knew I had to be careful. If I acted on this, if I did anything, I would destroy everything. My marriage, my life with Sarah, the trust we'd built together. I didn't want that. But the thought wouldn't leave my head. It was like a nagging voice in the back of my mind, getting louder by the minute. That evening, after a long day of pretending like everything was normal, I found myself sitting on the couch with Sarah, watching some movie we had picked out. It wasn't even that good. I couldn't focus. The whole time, I kept thinking about Emily, about Sarah's words, about what had been said between us. And I could tell Sarah wasn't completely herself either. She kept glancing at me, watching me as if she was waiting for something. Waiting for me to make the first move, maybe? It was hard to ignore the tension, but I didn't want to confront it. I didn't want to have that conversation. I didn't know how to. And then it happened. Sarah stood up to grab some snacks from the kitchen. I was alone for just a minute, and in that minute, I made a decision. I texted Emily. It was a simple message at first, just small talk. Hey, how's everything going? But then, as my fingers hovered over the keys, something inside me took over. I couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the wine we had been drinking. Maybe it was the heat of the moment. Or maybe it was the way Sarah had planted that thought in my head. But I found myself typing. Sarah was joking the other day. But you and I both know she's not wrong. I think you're beautiful. I've always thought that. I read the message over and over. My heart was pounding in my chest. My hands were shaking. What the hell was I doing? But before I could second guess myself, I hit send. The second I sent the message, my heart stopped. It felt like the room had spun for a second, and everything around me went silent. I didn't even hear Sarah moving around in the kitchen. The only sound was the pounding of my own heart, like a drumbeat echoing in my chest. What had I done? My phone sat there, screen lighting up with the little notification that I had a new message. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, not daring to look at it. But curiosity got the better of me. Slowly, almost reluctantly, I reached for my phone, and I unlocked it, my fingers trembling, and opened the message. It was Emily's response. You've always been honest with me. I think you're amazing too, but are we really talking about this right now? I stared at the words. Something about them unsettled me. There was a calmness to her reply, but beneath it I could feel the tension, like she was walking a fine line. I didn't know if I should be relieved or scared out of my mind. I had to keep going, right? I had already opened the door. Now I needed to see where it led. I typed back quickly, the words spilling out almost before I could think. I don't know what's happening, but this is something I've been thinking about for a while. I don't want to be dishonest with you or with Sarah, but what if there's more between us than we've admitted? As soon as I sent it, I regretted it. I hadn't even considered the consequences. What if she said no? What if she thought I was crazy? But at the same time, something inside me wanted this. The desire, the curiosity, it was too strong to ignore. Minutes passed. Then Emily replied, her response short, but loaded with meaning. Maybe you should come over tonight. We can talk, but no promises. That was it. She wanted to meet in person. She was willing to see where this went. A rush of adrenaline shot through me. This wasn't just texting anymore. It was happening. It was real. But then, my phone vibrated again. It was Sarah. Hey babe, I'm back. What's going on? I had to think fast. What would I say? I couldn't just tell her the truth. Not yet. Not like this. Not when everything was still so raw and confusing. I typed back quickly, trying to sound casual. Oh, nothing. Just texting with some people from work. How was your trip? She responded almost immediately, not suspecting a thing. It was fine. Just tired. Want to order pizza? Sure, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. But the weight of what was happening, the knowledge that I was about to cross a line, was sitting heavy on my shoulders. As Sarah went into the kitchen to get ready for the pizza, I sat there staring at my phone. I couldn't believe I had gotten to this point. The temptation to see where this would lead, to act on the feelings I had buried for so long, was almost overwhelming. But at the same time, the fear was just as strong. If I made this choice, it would change everything. It would tear my marriage apart. It would ruin the trust that Sarah and I had built over the years. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to let it go. I had been unhappy for a while now, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe this was my way of seeking something more, something I thought I was missing. Or maybe I was just being selfish. I didn't know. All I knew was that in that moment, I was standing on the edge, and all it would take was one step to send me falling. I could hear Sarah talking in the kitchen, her voice fading in and out as I looked back at my phone. I typed one last message to Emily. "I'll come over in a bit. I need to talk to you." Her response was quick. "See you soon." I put the phone down, my hands shaking. I couldn't breathe. I stood up and walked around the room, trying to calm myself, but every step felt like it was leading me closer to something I couldn't undo. Then Sarah called me from the kitchen, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. "Hey, pizza's on the way. Come help me with the drinks." I froze. This was it. The last moment of normalcy before everything changed. I had to make a decision. I could walk away from my phone, from the message, from everything. I could let it all go and pretend none of this had ever happened. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I couldn't. Not now. Not when I was this close to finding out what it would be like to give in to the temptation. So I did what I thought was right in that moment. I put on a smile, grabbed the drinks, and walked into the kitchen to join Sarah. But in the back of my mind, Emily's invitation was there, sitting in the shadows, waiting. As we ate our pizza, I couldn't focus on anything except what was about to happen. I couldn't stop thinking about how I was going to face Emily. What would it be like to look her in the eyes, to actually talk about the things that had only been in my head until now? Would it be as dangerous as I feared? Or would it be the escape I'd been looking for? I didn't know. But I was about to find out. The next hour dragged on, each minute like a heavy weight hanging over my head. The pizza was good, but it tasted bland to me. It didn't matter that we were eating or that Sarah was laughing about something on TV. My mind was elsewhere, consumed by thoughts of what was about to happen. Every time Sarah looked at me, I forced myself to smile, to pretend like everything was fine. But inside, I felt like a ticking bomb. My heart raced, and I could feel my palms sweating. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily, about the text, about the invitation. What the hell had I gotten myself into? "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, breaking through my haze. "Yeah," I replied quickly, too quickly. I knew she could sense something was off. She always could. "You seem distant," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Is everything okay at work? You're not acting like yourself." I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, everything at work was fine. I had no reason to be distracted. But my mind wasn't on work. It wasn't on the pizza or even Sarah. My thoughts were consumed by one thing. Emily. "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound convincing. "Just tired." Sarah gave me a small smile, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She didn't push it, though. Maybe she didn't want to upset the evening further. She got up to clear the table, and I took the opportunity to grab my phone again. I didn't want to look at it, but I couldn't resist. Emily had sent another message. "Are you still coming over? I'll be waiting." I hesitated. I wanted to type back and say, "No, I can't do this. It's wrong." But I didn't. I didn't want to stop. I felt like I was already too deep, and I wasn't sure I could climb out now. I put the phone down again and grabbed the last slice of pizza, forcing myself to chew. But all I could think about was the impending meeting. What if Emily was just as serious as I was? What if she had been waiting for this moment too? But what if it was all a mistake? What if I was reading too much into her words? I couldn't stop myself from thinking that maybe this was more than just a simple curiosity on her part. Maybe, just maybe, she had been hoping for something more too. "Are you going to help me with the kids' room later?" Sarah asked, her voice cutting through my thoughts. "Huh?" I blinked, startled by the question. "The kids' room," Sarah repeated, sounding more confused than usual. "We were supposed to organize it. You said you'd help." "Oh, right," I said, trying to regain my focus. "Yeah, I'll help later." I wanted to kick myself. How could I be so absent, so distracted? But all I could think about was the clock ticking down. I had to leave soon. The clock was running out. It didn't take long for Sarah to notice something was up. She was always the observant one. As the evening wore on, she grew quieter, less engaged. I tried to keep the conversation going, but she was pulling back, sensing the shift. She didn't ask again about my strange mood, but I knew she could feel it. No, something was off, and she wasn't stupid. She knew me better than anyone else. I got up to excuse myself to the bathroom. My stomach was in knots, and I needed a moment to clear my head. But as I walked down the hallway toward the bathroom, I heard Sarah talking softly to herself in the living room. Why do I feel like you're hiding something from me? I froze. My hand was still on the bathroom door, but I didn't go in. I didn't know if she was talking to me or if she was just speaking out loud. But the words cut through me. It was as if she could sense what was going on inside me, even though I hadn't said a word. The guilt hit me like a wave, but I forced myself to ignore it. I stepped into the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against it for a moment. I looked at myself in the mirror again, and I didn't recognize the person staring back. This wasn't who I was. Or was it? I was about to betray everything I had built with Sarah, everything that had mattered to me. But then my phone buzzed again. Emily, are you coming? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but the urge was too strong. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was more than that. It was about proving something to myself. It was about giving in to the temptation. And it was about testing the boundaries of my own self-control. But it wasn't just a temptation, it was a breaking point. I had to make a decision. I left the bathroom, walking back toward the living room, where Sarah was waiting, still sitting on the couch, but now with an unreadable expression on her face. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. She didn't look at me right away. I stood in the doorway for a second, unsure of what to do. I wanted to confess, to tell her the truth, but something stopped me. Something inside me told me that it was too late for that. I had already made the choice. I'm going out, I said, my voice low. She looked up at me, surprised. Out? Where? I need to clear my head. I'll be back soon. She nodded, her eyes still scanning my face. Okay, but don't be too late. I felt her eyes on me as I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The drive to Emily's was a blur. Every red light felt like it was holding me back from something I couldn't stop. The whole time, I kept asking myself what I was doing. What the hell was I thinking? But the answer was simple. I was going to see where this led. I was going to find out if this was just a momentary lapse or if I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. When I finally reached her place, I parked the car, my hand shaking on the steering wheel. I looked up at the building. It felt like I was staring at the edge of a cliff. I was about to jump. I rang the doorbell. The sound of the chime echoed through the night, and as I waited for her to answer, I felt my entire body tense. The door opened. Emily stood there, wearing a casual but alluring outfit, a loose sweater and jeans, her hair falling softly around her face. Her eyes were wide, as if she had been waiting for this moment too. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The air between us was charged, thick with anticipation. And then she stepped aside, letting me in. As I stepped into Emily's apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a line that would forever change everything. The air felt thicker in here, like a waiting storm ready to break open. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as I looked around the room. It was cozy, minimalist, with soft lighting casting warm shadows on the walls. But nothing in the room felt familiar. This wasn't the place where I belonged. Emily closed the door behind me, and I turned to face her, my breath shallow. She stood there for a moment, her gaze intense, almost studying me, as if she were trying to read the thoughts swirling in my head. We didn't say anything at first. The silence was deafening. There were no casual words, no pleasantries. We were both aware of what was happening, and nothing else seemed important. I finally spoke, my voice quieter than I intended. I shouldn't be here. Emily didn't respond right away. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine. She was close now, too close. I could feel the heat radiating off of her. She smelled like lavender and something else, something intoxicating. You don't have to say that, she murmured. You came here for a reason. Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. It wasn't just the simple invitation anymore. It wasn't just the maybe that I'd held on to for comfort. She knew. She knew exactly why I was here. She wasn't waiting for permission. She was expecting this. I felt a tightness in my throat, but I couldn't pull away. I couldn't even move. I was frozen in place, caught between the person I'd always been and the person I was becoming in this moment. Emily, this isn't right, I said, but my words sounded weak. Even to me, my voice was shaking, betraying the uncertainty I felt deep down inside. She didn't seem fazed. She took another step forward, and I noticed her lips were slightly parted, her breath shallow. "What if it could be?" she whispered, her voice soft, but laced with something I couldn't quite place, something both inviting and dangerous. My mind screamed at me to stop, to turn around and walk out the door. But my body didn't listen. I stayed rooted to the spot, my eyes locked with hers, and every part of me wanted to give in. The seconds felt like hours as we stood there, neither of us moving. And then, without a word, Emily reached out. Her hand touched my chest, right above my heart, and her fingers lingered there. The touch was light, almost hesitant, but the way she looked at me made it feel like there was no room for doubt anymore. "I've wanted this," she said quietly, almost as though she were confessing something. "I've wanted you. I've always known." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The weight of her words hung in the air, and I felt it settle on me like a heavy blanket. I was trapped. I wanted to step back, to distance myself, but I couldn't. I couldn't pull away from her touch. My body was betraying me, pulling me toward her instead. My breath hitched in my throat as I felt her fingers slowly trace down my shirt, the lightest touch that sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't think straight. The guilt, the fear was all there, but it was drowning beneath the rising tide of desire. "Emily," I tried to say, but my words caught in my throat. It was hard to think, hard to focus. All I could hear was the beating of my own heart, loud in my ears, drowning out everything else. She didn't wait for me to finish. She leaned in, her lips brushing against my ear. She whispered, "Don't fight it." And just like that, the last shred of my self-control snapped. Her lips were on mine, soft and insistent. I didn't resist. I couldn't. Everything inside me told me to stop, but all I could do was respond, caught in the moment. My hands found their way to her waist, pulling her closer. The world outside this room, outside this moment, vanished. It was just me and Emily. I kissed her back, and it felt like all the thoughts, all the doubts disappeared. I was lost in the sensation of it, the heat, the urgency, the fact that this was happening. It was reckless, it was wrong. But for the first time in what felt like forever, it felt like I was alive. I felt Emily's hands move to the back of my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me even closer. She made a soft noise, a sound of satisfaction that only pushed me further, making me lose myself in her touch. But in the back of my mind, I could hear Sarah's voice. I could hear her laughing, calling my name, asking me what was wrong. I could hear everything I had left behind, everything I was about to betray. I pulled away for a second, gasping for air, my hands trembling. "We can't," I whispered, trying to push the words out. "I can't do this." But Emily didn't let go. She didn't step back. She looked at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite name, but it wasn't regret. "You already are," she said softly, almost as though she were answering my unspoken question. "And you want this as much as I do." Before I could stop myself, I kissed her again. This time, the kiss was deeper, more urgent. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts, just the need to feel something, to experience what I thought I couldn't have. And as the night went on, as things became more intense between us, I kept telling myself I would stop. I would walk away. I would end it before it went too far. But each time, Emily's touch, her words, her presence kept pulling me back. I didn't know how much time passed. All I knew was that I was no longer thinking. I was no longer worried about the consequences. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The minutes blurred together, each one slipping by unnoticed as Emily and I were caught in the whirlwind of what was happening. There was a part of me, some small part, that wanted to pull away, to stop this madness before it went any further. But every time I tried to remind myself of what was at stake, of the life I was about to destroy, the pull between us became stronger. Emily's presence was like a drug, and I couldn't stop myself from getting deeper into it. Her hands were everywhere now, running along my back, tracing the lines of my body, as if she were memorizing every inch of me. It was intoxicating. Her skin felt like fire against mine, and every movement, every touch, seemed to feed the growing desire that I had tried to ignore for so long. But even as my body responded to hers, my mind screamed at me. I wasn't just betraying Sarah, my wife. I was betraying the trust we had built, the love we had shared for years. I had promised her that I would always be faithful, that I would never hurt her. But here I was with Sarah's sister, doing the very thing I had sworn I would never do. Do you want this? Emily's voice broke through my thoughts, her breath hot against my ear. I couldn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know anymore. Part of me was terrified of what I was doing, but another part of me was overwhelmed by the raw, undeniable attraction I felt for her. The forbidden nature of it only made it more intense, more powerful. It was like a switch had flipped inside me, and I couldn't find the off button. I pulled back for a moment, my chest rising and falling as I tried to steady my breath. We shouldn't be doing this, I whispered. But even I didn't believe the words. I wasn't trying to convince her. I was trying to convince myself. But Emily was already pulling me back in, her hands cupping my face, her lips finding mine again, urgent and desperate. There was no space between us now. The line between what was right and what was wrong had blurred into nothing, and I had crossed it without a second thought. When she pulled away this time, her eyes were darker, more intense, like she was reading every emotion playing out on my face. You don't have to fight it, she said softly, her voice a low murmur that sent shivers down my spine. You want this. I know you do. I couldn't deny it. I wanted it. It wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something that I had been pushing down for so long. Emily wasn't just Sarah's sister. She was an everything that Sarah couldn't be in that moment. Sarah had been busy, distracted with life, with everything that came with marriage. Emily, on the other hand, was here, present. She saw me. She understood me in ways I hadn't realized I needed. But, as the thoughts raced through my mind, I couldn't shake the guilt, the overwhelming guilt that was starting to suffocate me. This wasn't just about the desire. This was about consequences. This was about trust, love, and betrayal. And I was standing on the edge of something I might not be able to come back from. You need to stop, I finally said, my voice hoarse. I pulled away, but this time, Emily didn't resist. She stood there watching me, her expression unreadable. Why? She asked, her voice quiet but insistent. You're here. No, you came here for a reason. Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was true. I had come here, seeking something I didn't fully understand, but I didn't know how to stop, how to turn back. The door had been opened, and it was too late to close it. I love my wife, I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. How could I say that with any conviction when I was here, standing in front of Emily, ready to make a choice that would destroy everything I had built? Emily took a step forward, her hand resting gently on my arm. But are you happy? She asked, her eyes searching mine for the answer. I didn't answer right away. The truth hung in the air between us, thick and heavy. Was I happy? I didn't know. I loved Sarah, but there was a part of me that felt empty, a part of me that had been craving something more, something that Emily was offering without hesitation. I didn't know if it was just the situation, the temptation, or if it was something real. But in that moment, I couldn't tell the difference. I'm not saying I don't love her, I finally whispered, my voice breaking, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is, but it feels too real. Emily's hand slid up to my shoulder, and she gently turned me to face her. She was so close now that I could feel the heat of her body against mine. Her eyes were soft, but there was a depth in them that I couldn't ignore. I'm not asking you to leave her, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I think you've been wanting this, whether you admit it or not, and maybe this is just what you need. I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, caught between the woman I had promised my life to and the woman who had always been there, just out of reach. But as I looked into Emily's eyes, I felt like I had already made my decision. I didn't know what the future would bring. I didn't know what would happen after tonight. But I knew I was here, in this moment, and I couldn't stop myself anymore. I leaned in, kissing her again, this time without hesitation. There was no guilt. There was no regret. There was just the fire between us, burning brighter and brighter with every second. But in the back of my mind, something still lingered. It was that nagging voice, the one telling me this was wrong, that I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And maybe, just maybe, I was making the biggest mistake of my life. The kiss felt like a spark, igniting a fire that I couldn't put out. Emily's lips were soft but insistent, and as she pressed closer, I could feel everything inside me unraveling. The world outside her apartment, outside this moment, seemed to disappear entirely. There was no Sarah, no guilt, no consequences, just Emily, just the heat of the moment. I hadn't meant for it to go this far. I hadn't meant to cross the line that had been drawn between us. But the way Emily kissed me, the way she made me feel like I was the only one in the world that mattered, it was irresistible. I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. I pulled her closer, my hands finding the curve of her back, pulling her body against mine. The contact sent a shiver through me, the kind of shiver that told me I was doing something I shouldn't. But in that moment, I didn't care. The world outside this room didn't matter anymore. As we kissed, Emily's hands began to roam. She was no longer hesitant. Neither of us was. There was nothing holding us back. Her fingers slipped beneath my shirt, her touch warm and sure. I wanted to stop. I knew I should stop. But every time I tried to pull away, the pull between us grew stronger. She was a force I couldn't resist. Finally, I managed to break the kiss, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. Emily, we can't. We shouldn't. My words were broken, stilted. But she didn't give me the chance to finish. Instead, she stepped back slightly, looking at me with those eyes that were filled with something I couldn't define. It was like she was reading me, now seeing through the confusion, seeing the part of me that was drawn to her. You don't have to say it, she whispered, her voice low and steady. I know you're scared. But don't you want this too? I wanted to say no. I wanted to turn away, walk out the door, and never look back. But the truth was deep down, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to walk away from her. I do, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I do want this. But I can't just forget about Sarah. Sarah. The name felt like a weight on my chest, pulling me back to reality, to the life I had built with her. But in that moment, as I stood there with Emily, I realized something that scared me more than anything. I didn't know if I wanted to go back to that life anymore. Emily stepped closer again, her fingers brushing against my cheek, her touch gentle yet electrifying. You don't have to choose right now. Just let this happen. Just feel it. Don't think about the consequences. We'll figure it out later. Her words were like an invitation to cross a line. I knew I shouldn't cross, but I couldn't resist. I was already so deep, and the thought of walking away seemed impossible. I kissed her again, this time more urgently, more desperately. The fear, the guilt, the confusion, it all melted away as soon as our lips met. This was what I wanted. This was what I had been craving, even if I didn't fully understand why. I felt her hands move again, this time tugging at my shirt. The sound of the fabric tearing slightly under her hands seemed to snap me out of my daze for just a moment. I pulled back, breathing hard. Emily, we can't. But she cut me off with a kiss, pressing me back against the wall of her apartment. I was dizzy from it all. The kiss, the desire, the overwhelming pull between us. It was like I had no control anymore. I was lost in her. You don't have to stop, she murmured, her voice low and husky. We've already started. Let's just see where it goes. I wanted to fight it. I wanted to push her away, to walk out the door and never look back. But the truth was, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay. I wanted to let it happen. And so, I did. The hours that followed were a blur, a mixture of passion and confusion, of fleeting moments of pleasure that were quickly overshadowed by the growing weight of what I knew I was doing. I could feel the boundary between right and wrong slipping further and further away. The guilt was there, but it was buried beneath the heat of the moment, at the desire that clouded my mind. Somewhere along the way, Emily and I moved to the couch, and that's when things escalated even more. The tension that had been building between us finally reached its breaking point. Every kiss, every touch felt like a step closer to something irreversible, something I couldn't take back. But in the midst of it all, I couldn't shake the thought of Sarah. Her face kept flashing in my mind, her smile, the way she looked at me with trust and love, the way she depended on me. How could I do this to her? How could I betray her like this? But then, Emily's hands were on me again, her lips trailing down my neck, and all thoughts of Sarah faded into the background. I wasn't thinking about anything anymore. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe it was hours. Maybe it was just minutes. All I knew was that when it was over, when we were both lying there, breathless and tangled in the sheets, something shifted in me. I didn't feel the relief I had expected. I didn't feel free. I felt trapped. I lay there for a long time, staring up at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing down on me. And then Emily spoke. "I'm glad you came," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. "I've wanted this for a long time." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. But it wasn't the kind of shiver I had hoped for. It was the kind of shiver that made me feel like I had made a mistake I couldn't take back. As I lay there, Emily's words hung in the air, too heavy for me to ignore. "I'm glad you came." Her voice, soft but firm, reverberated in my chest, like a bell ringing in the quiet aftermath. I didn't know what to say, or how to respond. What could I say? I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And now, as I lay next to Emily, staring at the ceiling with the weight of what had just happened pressing on me, I felt the full force of it. The guilt was suffocating. It wasn't relief or satisfaction that I felt. It was an overwhelming sense of dread. I had betrayed Sarah. The thought hit me like a punch in the stomach. My wife, the woman I had promised to love, to honor, to cherish. The woman I had shared my life with for years. How could I have done this? How could I have let it get this far? I turned my head slowly, glancing over at Emily. She was still lying beside me, her hair tousled, her eyes closed, a soft, contented smile on her lips. I didn't know if she was happy or if she was just comfortable, but either way, so I felt nothing but confusion and regret. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't stop the reality from settling in. She was my wife's sister. This wasn't some random affair. This was an act of betrayal that I couldn't explain away no matter how much I wanted to. I knew I couldn't stay here. Not anymore. I had to leave. But the words didn't come. I didn't want to be harsh. I didn't want to make things worse. So I stayed silent, just staring at the ceiling, hoping the answer would come to me. Finally, Emily stirred beside me. Her hand found mine, fingers slipping into the spaces between mine. She squeezed gently, a small comfort that only made my stomach turn even more. She was so calm, so relaxed, as though none of this was affecting her. How could she be this way? Did she not feel the weight of what had just happened? "You seem far away," she said softly, her voice laced with curiosity. "What's on your mind?" I couldn't lie to her. Not now. Not after everything, but I didn't know how to say it. I couldn't bring myself to admit that I felt like I had ruined everything. I just "I don't know how to deal with this," I said, the words coming out in a rush, as though I'd been holding them in for far too long. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice still calm, but now tinged with something else, something that felt like concern. "I'm married," I said, the truth tasting bitter on my tongue. "I have a family, I have a life with Sarah, and I've just ruined it." Her grip on my hand tightened, but she didn't say anything at first. The room was silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on both of us. I could hear my own breath, shallow and uneasy, and it seemed like time had frozen. "I didn't mean to do this to you," I continued, my voice cracking slightly. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to stop." "You didn't have to stop," she said quietly, her tone softer now, like she was trying to comfort me. "You came here for a reason. You wanted this too." Her words stung. How could she be so sure? Did she not see the chaos I was feeling? Or was she blind to it all, caught up in the moment like I had been? I wanted something, I whispered, but I don't know if I wanted this. Not like this. Not with you. The words hit her harder than I expected. I could see her face shift, a flicker of hurt crossing her features, before she quickly masked it with that same calm composure she always wore. She pulled her hand away, and I immediately regretted the words. I'm sorry, I said quickly, sitting up in a panic. I didn't mean it like that. I don't know what I'm doing. Emily didn't answer right away. She just stared at me, her eyes wide and filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but no words came. The silence stretched between us, suffocating and thick with unspoken things. Finally, she sighed and sat up next to me, her back against the headboard. She didn't look at me at first, staring instead at the window, where the soft light of the moon filtered through the blinds. Do you think this is the first time I've felt this way? She asked. Her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Do you think I don't know what this is, what this feels like? She asked, turning to face me, her expression now hardening. I've wanted you for so long, but I never thought it would happen like this. I never thought I'd be the one to betray Sarah. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know how to respond. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected to hear her say that she had wanted me too. I never wanted to hurt anyone, Emily continued, her voice becoming colder, more distant. But you made the choice, not me. You came to me. You crossed that line. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I had crossed that line. I had made the decision. And now, it felt like it was too late to take back. Everything was falling apart around me, and I couldn't stop it. I was the one who had walked into this mess. I was the one who had ruined everything. I don't know what to do now, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know how to fix this. Emily stared at me for a long moment, as if weighing her next words carefully. Maybe you can't fix it, she said finally, her tone resigned. Maybe this is just how it was meant to be. The weight of her words crushed me. I had hope for a way out, a way to undo everything. But there was no easy escape. The damage had already been done. I stood up from the bed, my hands trembling. I needed to leave. I couldn't stay here, not like this. Not with Emily looking at me with those eyes. Eyes that I didn't know how to face anymore. I'm sorry, I whispered again, but I didn't know if she heard me. I grabbed my jacket, pulling it on quickly. The door was so close now, just a few steps away. But when I reached for the handle, I paused, looking back at Emily. She was still sitting on the bed, her face unreadable, her body tense. For a moment, I thought about saying something, anything, to try and make it right. But I didn't know what words to use. Nothing I said would change what had happened. Nothing I said could undo the hurt I had caused. So, I left. And as I walked out that door, the weight of everything hit me all at once. I had betrayed my wife. I had betrayed her sister. And I had no idea how I was ever going to fix it. The drive home was a blur. The roads seemed endless, stretching out in front of me like an unbroken line, and every mile felt like an eternity. I couldn't focus on the road. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Saw him, but I barely noticed. All I could hear was the voice in my head, a constant loop of Sarah's face, her trust in me, the way she had believed in us. What had I done? I hadn't even made it halfway back home when I pulled over to the side of the road, my chest tightening. I couldn't breathe. I needed air. My mind was clouded with so many thoughts. Emily's face, her touch, the way she had looked at me, and the guilt that had been hanging over me since I left her apartment. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. What would I say to her? How could I even begin to explain what had happened? I couldn't go back and erase it. I couldn't take back the kiss, the choices I had made. The door had been open, and there was no way to close it. I tried to take deep breaths, forcing myself to calm down, but the fear was suffocating. My entire world was crumbling around me, and I had no idea how to stop it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah. I saw her smile, the way she trusted me. And then I saw Emily, her lips, her eyes, the way she had pulled me in, the way she had made me feel wanted, like I was something more than just a husband or a father. But that wasn't who I was. I was Sarah's husband. I was the man who promised her forever, who swore to be faithful, to be loyal. I had made a commitment, and now I had shattered it. I had chosen this moment. I had walked into Emily's arms. I had crossed the line, and there was no going back. But how could I look Sarah in the eyes now? How could I face her, knowing what I had done? The thought of facing her, of telling her the truth, made my stomach turn. I had never been afraid of honesty before, but this was different. This wasn't just a lie. This wasn't just some small mistake I could fix with an apology. I had hurt her in the worst way possible. I had broken something in our relationship that could never be fixed. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of it all. I thought about Emily, about how easy it had been, how it had felt like she was the answer to everything I had been missing. But as the minutes passed, I realized that what had happened with Emily wasn't real. It wasn't love. It wasn't even about her. It was about me, about my own insecurities, my own fears of not being enough. But that wasn't an excuse. It was just the truth. And the truth didn't make what I had done any less wrong. Finally, after what felt like hours, I started the car again. The drive home seemed longer this time. The streets were quiet, the world around me calm, but inside it felt like a storm was raging. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to avoid it all, but I couldn't. I had to face Sarah. I had to tell her what I had done, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much it terrified me. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I took one last look at the house we had built together. It was still silent, but it felt cold now, distant. I walked to the front door slowly, my mind racing. What would I say? How could I explain this? I opened the door and stepped inside. Sarah was sitting on the couch, a book in her lap, her eyes focused on the pages. She looked up when she heard me, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal again. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "You're home early." I opened my mouth to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. I couldn't do this. I couldn't say the words. The guilt was too much. I stepped closer to her, and she stood up, smiling at me, as if everything was fine. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I couldn't speak. I couldn't look at her. "Sarah, I started, but the words caught in my throat again. She reached out for me, her hand touching my arm gently. "What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." And in that moment, I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't destroy everything in a single moment. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. I wasn't ready. I wasn't strong enough to face the consequences of what I had done. But I couldn't keep lying either. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know how to fix this." Sarah's eyes softened and she stepped closer. She wrapped her arms around me, holding me tightly. I could feel her warmth, her trust, and it broke me. I had betrayed that trust. I had broken her heart without even thinking about the consequences. "I'm here," she whispered, her voice full of reassurance. "We'll figure it out. Whatever it is, we'll work through it together." I didn't deserve her kindness. I didn't deserve her love. But in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice, a real choice. I had to decide whether I wanted to fight for this fight for her, for us, or if I was too far gone. I held her tightly, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I didn't know how we could come back from this. I didn't know if we could. But I knew one thing for sure. It was time to face the truth. No matter how much it hurt, the days that followed were a blur. Every moment felt heavier than the last, like the weight of everything I had done was pulling me down. I tried to go about my routine, tried to act like things were normal, but it wasn't. It wasn't normal anymore. Every time I looked at Sarah, I saw the love she had for me. I saw the trust, the loyalty, but I also saw the quiet, unspoken question in her eyes, the same question I'd been avoiding for days. What had happened? Why had I been so distant? Why hadn't I been honest with her? I couldn't avoid it anymore. I couldn't pretend. I had to tell her. It was late one evening when I finally sat down with Sarah, both of us in the living room. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I could hear the steady beat of my heart, louder than the silence between us. She looked up at me, waiting, her eyes soft with concern. "Is there something you're not telling me?" she asked, her voice gentle but full of expectation. I took a deep breath. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you days ago. Her expression shifted slightly like she knew what was coming but wasn't quite ready for it. I could see her mind working, trying to make sense of what she was about to hear. I made a mistake, I said, my voice shaking, a big one. I kissed Emily. The words hung in the air, heavy and damning. I watched as her eyes widened, her breath catching for a split second. But she didn't pull away. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at me with a mix of shock and hurt, but also understanding. Sarah, I'm so sorry, I whispered. I don't know how it happened, but it did. And I've been carrying this guilt with me every second, every minute. I can't undo it. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm telling you the truth because you deserve to know. She stayed silent for a long time. Her eyes never left mine, her face unreadable, as if she was processing everything I had just said. The silence between us felt suffocating, like the world was holding its breath. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the tension. You made a mistake, but so did I. I blinked, confused. What do you mean? I should have never said that to you, she continued, her voice steady, but filled with a quiet remorse. I made that comment you'd probably sleep with my sister if I let you. I never should have said that. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was testing you, pushing you, and I shouldn't have. It's not your fault that it happened. You didn't ask for this. But I shouldn't have said what I said. I shouldn't have planted that thought in your mind. My heart dropped. I had never considered that perspective. All this time, I had been blaming myself for what had happened, for crossing the line. But now I saw it. Sarah had been testing me, but she hadn't meant for this to happen. I never meant for any of this, she added, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can't blame you. I can't blame you for something I set in motion. I never thought it would go this far. Her words hit me harder than I expected. The weight of it all suddenly felt more bearable, like a burden had been lifted. She was hurt, yes, Joe, but she wasn't angry at me, not entirely, and she was acknowledging her part in it. I reached out to her, my hand trembling as I took hers. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, and I'll do anything to make this right. She squeezed my hand, her eyes softening. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but you did, and I'm going to need time to process this, to figure out what happens next. She paused and then added, but what hurts the most isn't what you did. It's what my sister did. I froze, unsure of where she was going with this. Emily, she said, her voice filled with disappointment. I can't believe she fell for this. She knows you're my husband. She's known us both for years. She knew how much you meant to me, and yet she still let it happen. That's what I can't understand. How could she do that? I felt a pang of guilt twist in my gut. It was like a second betrayal. I hadn't just hurt Sarah, I had hurt Emily too. And now her actions were just as wrong, just as damaging. Sarah, I said softly, my voice breaking. I never meant for any of this. I never wanted to hurt you. And I certainly didn't mean to hurt Emily. I was weak. I was foolish. I know, she replied quietly. But the fact that Emily let this happen, I can't forgive that easily. She's my sister, and she should have known better. I nodded, understanding now that the betrayal wasn't just mine. It was hers, too. Emily had crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed, and I had let it happen. We sat there for a while, the silence stretching between us. Sarah didn't blame me. She understood my mistake, and she had already forgiven me to some extent. But Emily's betrayal was something different. That was going to take time. It was something Sarah was going to have to work through on her own. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Her voice was calm, but there was a firmness in it that I hadn't heard before. We'll get through this. We have to. But I won't forget what happened. I won't forget what Emily did. I need to process this. And so do you. I understand, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I want to earn your trust again. I want to fix this. She nodded, her eyes meeting mine, a hint of sadness still lingering there. It's going to take time. But I'll forgive you. I have to. But Emily, that's going to be a different story.